Hello, I'm Dawn Fluellen, and thank you for watching Chasing Dawn. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see the you that everyone else sees at first glance? Or do you see the you that you were purposed to be? The inward uniqueness built just for you. Today we'll talk to Cyan Centeno, Miss Maryland World 2015, who says that beauty with a purpose goes far beyond the surface.
My name is Cyan Centeno. I'm Miss Maryland World 2015, and I'm from Hughesville, Maryland. Well, Miss Maryland World is a part of the Miss World organization, and in July I'll be competing for Miss World America. And what this organization is all about is beauty with a purpose. And what that really means is what you're doing in the community to impact the lives of others. So this isn't your stereotypical beauty pageant. It's not about the most expensive clothes. It's not about who's the most beautiful. It's about who's the most beautiful on the inside and what you're doing to improve the lives of the other people around you. My definition of inner beauty is compassion. I think it's really about giving, and that's the way that I was brought up. I was brought up to give to people that aren't as fortunate as you are, and to give hope to others who don't have any. And that really is what beauty is to me, is about helping other people. Well, I was born in St. Croix, which is in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I lived in the islands for 8 years, so until I was 8 years old. And growing up in the U.S. Virgin Islands really taught me the importance of community, and that's because everyone in the islands knows each other. Everyone in the islands supports one another, and that's really where I felt the most unity out of everywhere that I've lived. And when I lived in the Virgin Islands, I would visit my grandfather, and we would go around St. Croix and rescue dogs that were roaming the streets and in danger of getting hit by a car. And I was really young when I started doing that. And he's really ultimately what taught me how to have a giving heart and how to be a voice for those that don't have a voice, whether it be a human being or an animal. Well, when I was 8 years old, I had found out that I would be moving from the U.S. Virgin Islands to California. And this would be my first time ever living in the U.S. mainland. I was excited. Once I got to California, it was beautiful. And then I got to school, and I realized that I looked different. And I lived in Southern California, and that's by the Malibu area. So I didn't look like everybody else. I was tan. I was a lot tanner than I am now because I came from the islands, and everybody around me was not. I was the only Hispanic girl in my class, and I had big glasses. I had very, very long, dark brown hair. And I dressed a little bit more colorful than everybody else, and I think that's because of my culture growing up in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I went to school, and the first thing I noticed was that nobody looked like me. And that was really difficult for me. My sister, on the other hand, she is very fair-skinned and had really light brown hair. So she fit in really well, and I didn't. And so I think the fact that I looked different, and I also, had these big glasses and crooked teeth and really long dark hair, I immediately, as soon as I stepped into my classroom that first day, began being bullied. And the first thing that a girl said to me was, ew, I don't want to sit with her. And she said that to the teacher because the teacher was trying to find me a friend. And that was the first thing that I heard when I walked into that classroom. And that went on like that for years. But that very first day of the third grade, I skipped my first meal, and I skipped, I think it was the snack time, recess, and then I skipped lunch. The reason I did this was because I didn't want to be seen eating alone. I was embarrassed, and I remember seeing my sister walking to the lunchroom, and she was looking for me, but I didn't want her to see that I was eating alone because she had already been surrounded by a group of people, and I was by myself. So I just stayed in front of the classroom door, sat in front of the class and cried, and that was my first day. And so that was when I experienced the feeling of being hungry. I had never ever had that feeling before, the feeling of being so intensely hungry, because of course my parents never let it get to that point. You know, we're Hispanic, we love food. So I ended up doing that every day. I ended up skipping breakfast, I ended up skipping lunch, snacks, and that became an escape for me. That hunger feeling became a comfort. And so I started skipping other meals. By the time I was in 4th grade, I was hiding old food under my bed, and it smelled awful. And the reason I was doing it was because I was so incredibly depressed. I didn't really have any friends, and the friends that I did have also got picked on. So it was really hard, and I found starvation to be a coping mechanism. And so as the years went on, you know, I got bullied. People thought I was weird. You know, I liked anime. I still like anime. I read a lot of books. That's pretty much what I did. I read, I would draw. I loved anime books. So I was kind of strange, you know. A lot of the girls were in dance class or in cheerleading. And I was like, no, I'm going to go sit in the corner and read my book. So I was different, and people would pick on me for that. One of my most vivid memories is having a group of 4 or 5 boys who came up to me in 4th grade and randomly said, "We just wanted to tell you that you're ugly." And that really brought me down. So I would spend a lot of time crying to my mom saying, "I want to be white," you know? And that used to hurt her so much, and she would say, "All my life I wanted a little girl that looked like you." She wanted a baby that was tan like me. My mom's the opposite. She's fair-skinned. And I would be like, "No, it's ugly," you know? And that's because I hated myself. So then, you know, I continued starving myself. I didn't know what anorexia was. I was really young, and it was not something that was talked about a lot to kids that were my age, so I didn't even know what I was doing. By the time middle school came, I was cutting myself. I was cutting my wrists, and that was another coping mechanism. And I started failing school. I went from being a honor roll student and a straight A student to having a 1.5 GPA in middle school. And it wasn't that I wasn't comprehending what I was learning, it was that I didn't care. And the reason I didn't care was because I was depressed. And I didn't want to be alive. So by the time I was in middle school, you know, I was listening to rock music, which I still love rock music. I was wearing spikes, you know, I had my hair dyed and like red at the ends, and I was very, you know, like the rocker girl. And people would make fun of me for that too. They said I was a freak, I was psycho. So in middle school, I ended up adopting that psycho term that they used to call me and made it a joke because that was how I coped with it. Because my name is Cyan, that I decided that I wanted people to call me psycho. Because I didn't want to let them win. That was my way of winning. So the anorexia got worse, and by the time high school came, I had learned what anorexia was through a friend of mine. And the reason I found out was because she was doing it too. And so instead of her saying, "Don't do this," she said, let's go on the computer, let me show you some tips on starvation, let me show you how to make yourself throw up. And so, you know, I had still never discussed anorexia before. I had never heard about starving yourself until then, so I thought, oh, it's okay, she's doing it too. So we became starving partners. And we started doing it together. She would give me diet pills. I would take too many. So I ended up dropping weight very fast. And it was like that throughout high school, even when I moved here. When I moved to Maryland, when I was 15, it got worse. And it was because of the shift in cultures again. Maryland is very different from California. Maryland is more accepting. Maryland is more diverse. And I fit in right away when I moved here. People were so nice, but I was still affected by what had happened to me before. So I continued starving myself, and I dropped, by the time I moved here, I think I had dropped to 85 pounds, and that was not my lowest. So people started noticing the weight loss, because I was also depressed that I had left my friends behind in California. So then, once people found out I was starving myself, they started bullying me. They were calling me crazy, psycho. Some people would call me fat just to mess with me. So I ended up being hospitalized at my first eating disorder clinic when I was 16. And I was there for about 2 months because I could not stand it anymore, so I convinced my parents to get me out. But that was the hardest, one of the hardest things I've ever been through, was being in that hospital. Because if you didn't eat your meals or you didn't gain weight, they wouldn't allow you to see your parents. They wouldn't allow you to have calls from people. You wouldn't be allowed to take a shower. They had these absurd rules. And every day I would get my blood drawn through my vein right here. So every day was in the same spot. And so my whole arm ended up being bruised. And I don't think that hospital knew how to handle people who were suffering from eating disorders. So that actually ended up becoming a very traumatizing thing for me. So my parents took me out because they felt that that hospital was abusive and not helpful. And my therapist ended up telling me that I was a little bit traumatized by what I had been through in that hospital. They wouldn't let us go to the bathroom unless it was a certain time, so I ended up developing a urinary tract infection while I was in their care. My arms were all bruised up, you know, from getting my blood drawn. If I refused, they would restrain me. So it was a very traumatizing thing. And then when I got out, people were bullying me for being in a psychiatric hospital. So I ended up attempting suicide about, I think it was about 2 months after I got out. I had gained, I think, like 15 pounds, and people were calling me fat and saying a bunch of horrible things, and I was already insecure about the weight I had gained. Even though I wasn't fat, I wasn't even a normal weight yet. To me, it looked bad. So when people were saying those things, it pushed me on edge, not just because of what they were saying, but because I had a hard time accepting the fact that I had gained so much weight. So I ended up attempting suicide. I overdosed on anxiety medication, and my mom rushed me to the hospital. I was slurring my speech. I didn't know what was going on. And I can't remember the exact number I took, pills I took, but I took whatever was left in the bottle, which I would guesstimate to be 14, 15 pills of anxiety medication. So when I got there, you know, they had taken that out of my system and put me right back in a psychiatric ward. And that one was actually wonderful. That was a wonderful hospital stay. I met my best friend there, actually. We're still best friends to this day. You know, that was a great experience as far as making friends and finding people who were going through the same things as you. But I don't think that even now in our time that health professionals know how to handle mental illnesses. And it's very difficult to treat, but there needs to be a lot more research done. So I went till I was about 19 with anorexia, and my lowest weight was 79 pounds when I was 19. So when I reached this point, I went, the doctors kept telling me that my heart could stop at any time. Literally, they said, any time now you can go into cardiac arrest. We're telling you right now that you're going to die if you don't stop. I didn't care. So, of course, I kept going. And then they wanted to do a bone scan, a bone DEXA scan, to see how the health of my bones were. I did it, and it came back that I had osteoporosis, and that is a incurable progressive bone disease that is most commonly diagnosed in women well into their 50s who are postmenopausal. I was still a teenager when I was diagnosed with this. So that scared me. That scared me really, really badly. And I became angry that I had been going through this my whole life. I said, everybody's expecting me to die. That's what everyone was saying. They were preparing for me to die. They were expecting me to die. And it made me angry because I realized that these bullies are what pushed me to this point in my life, to that point in my life.